4 p.m. and I've made my first cup of coffee of the day. Welcome to another video. Welcome to another few days in my life. I really like these types of videos because I feel like I'm not waiting too long before I pick up the next camera, and it's like I'm telling my life story of everything that I want to share with you all. So it's fun and I'm enjoying it. It's the second week of December, the second week of 75 booked. Week 1 ended and I thought it went pretty well overall. I got through every one of my tasks every single day. I read my 2 45-minute reading sessions. I finished more water than ever last week. And the hardest part of 75 booked for me was the additional rule that I gave myself, which was get 8,000 steps a day. And that is just more of a health rule that I needed to add to my challenge. I have learned about myself that I do better when I have a challenge that I'm trying to overcome or I'm put under pressure. And so that's why I added the 8,000 steps to my 75 booked. It also ties into 75 booked because one of my reading options is to either read while I work on a craft or read while I'm walking on the treadmill. So that's where the 8,000 steps also ties into 75 booked. But it's going well so far. I don't feel like I'm forcing myself to read, and I'm enjoying the books that I'm reading, which we'll get into in a second. And I'm just excited for week 2. I already finished a book. Last week's video was about Bright I Burn, so I finished my first book of December, and I have a few more to go of my 10 before the end that I picked out for myself. And of course, I have pivoted, and I am reading based off of my mood and reading other books, even though I'm still trying to get through my 10 before the end. These are the books that I'm trying to finish that I haven't read yet. I really enjoyed filming last week's video, which was about week 9 of The Artist's Way, and I also turned it into a reading vlog, and I want to do that again this week because the book that I am planning on reading for this video is actually an ARC that was gifted to me by Saga Press Books. I was going to wait until January to read it, but I saw that my friend is reading it, so we're both going to buddy read it together. It's really short. It's only 240 pages. It's called On Sundays She Picked Flowers by Yah Yah Scholfield. I've never heard of this author before, and it is a Southern Gothic horror, I believe. The story is about our main character. Her name is Judith. She ends up running away from her mother to northern Georgia into the woods, and the reason why she runs away is because her mother is abusive, so she is just fed up with how she's been treated. She has her own demons to battle on top of what's out there in the woods. She has to interact with ghosts, ghouls, and just paranormal spirits. And I believe we jump forward in time because in the synopsis it says that at one point there's a mysterious woman who shows up 13-ish years later, and now she's having to confront this woman and also remember some of the things. Remember. You're already remembering. You don't remember. Do you remember? She has to come back to those really difficult moments in her life. This is a story about family bonds and trauma. It's a horror and an LGBTQIA plus horror as well. So I'm loving that we're already going to see some representation. I am a big fan of Southern Gothic horror stories based on the synopsis and just the vibes. There's some historical elements added to it as well. With that, I just need to keep reading and then we'll talk about it. We are at week 10 of The Artist's Way. I can't believe I have officially 3 more weeks of The Artist's Way. There are 12 weeks total. This week's I'm a little nervous for. It's called Recovering a Sense of Self. The little blurb says, this week we explore the perils that can ambush us on our creative path. Because creativity is a spiritual issue, many of these perils are spiritual perils. We'll search out toxic patterns we cling to that block our creative flow. Okay, I'm just like not one to be very spiritual, and I've tried to open up, and I've just tried to give in to whatever Julia Cameron is saying. I know I'm not done, but for the 2 cents that I'll share right now, The Artist's Way isn't the most life-changing thing that I've ever worked on and accomplished. I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned so many good tricks and advice, and Julia Cameron is brilliant. I get that, but also from a spirituality perspective, it's not that deep for me, and I don't think it's ever going to be. I don't know what I expected. I don't know if I was going to have an epiphany and the end all be all spirits of creativity and the universe would open up and I would believe in it and whatever and all of that jazz. I just was spitting out words. I'm just not like that. And that's fine. I've accepted it. I am still almost done and I'm going through the process and I am learning. And that's the most important part. No, actually, the most important part is that I am actually creating art. That's the whole point of this. So we'll talk about week 10. We'll do the artist date together. I have some ideas. Welcome to this video. Welcome to another weekly vlog. Enjoy! I'm gonna finish my coffee at 4 p.m. Cheers. She's good. I just finished reading through week 10 of The Artist's Way, Recovering a Sense of Protection. And this section wasn't as spiritual as I thought it was going to be, which is great. This chapter, I feel like, mostly talks about toxicity. The chapter starts off pretty quickly saying that we all have our own ways of blocking our creativity, and that's pretty self-explanatory because no human is exactly the same. And then the chapter broke out into different sections of drought, competition, fame, work, and how all of these things, intentionally or not, hinder our creative spirit. And maybe that's what Julia Cameron meant by creative spirit. But what I thought to be the most interesting is the idea of drought, and not in the water way or lack thereof water. More so it's the idea that in any creative life, we are going to have dry spells. We are going to have moments where we don't feel inspired. We don't feel creative at all. And when we do feel this way, it's so important to continue our morning pages, because when we share our morning pages and our stream of consciousness, our unfiltered thoughts, that's when the real recovery can happen, especially during a dry spell. And I love, love, love this quote. To write is to write things. To write is to write things. To write is to write things. I really like that quote, and I probably would never have found that to be as inspiring before starting the Artist's Way, but now that I found my morning pages to be such a big part of my day, I found that quote to just be really relatable to me and very inspiring, because it's so true. My morning pages have just helped me grow mentally, emotionally, and not so much physically, but my handwriting may or may not be improving at that. And Julia Cameron reminds us that our morning pages are our lifeline. And so when we feel the least inspired, that's when our morning pages are the most important to us. And I 100% agree with her on that. The workaholic section or work section wasn't as important to me because I have a pretty good work-life balance. Work as in my primary 9-to-5 job, not YouTube, since I am monetized on YouTube. It's so important to find that balance. I'm really fortunate to have that flexibility and that barrier between work and life. Julia Cameron does say that an excuse to not create, such as, if I had more time, I would, and using work as an excuse is synchronous of someone's worth. And so a lot of people think that their work is tied to their worth, and that's not true at all. I actually had such a hard time letting go of this idea earlier this year. I wish I would have read this chapter earlier when I started The Artist's Way, or even earlier this summer. This chapter was really short. I feel like fame and competition kind of go hand in hand. Julia Cameron says that fame is really a shortcut for self-approval. Try approving of yourself just as you are and spoiling yourself rotten with small kids' pleasures. You shouldn't be creating art for other people. You shouldn't be creating art for fame. You should be creating art for yourself. And that's where the idea of self-worth comes from, when you let go of that fame. And same goes for competition. Competition lies at the root of much creative blockage. The desire to be better than can choke off the simple desire to be. I also really like that quote. So a lot to think about in this chapter. I feel like the theme of this chapter is letting go of the toxicity of competition, fame, work, whatever it may be, that's really keeping you from creating, or even really drought that uninspiredness of it all. And when in doubt, just write. Use your morning pages as a way to guide you to find your creative self again, and just continue treating yourself with kindness and love, and continue to treat yourself with the worthiness that you deserve. That is my takeaway from this week. I definitely took more out of this chapter than I thought I would, because, well, since at the beginning I thought we were going to go on this spiritual mumbo jumbo route, and we didn't. Which is great. I thought while I'm here, I can give you a reading update on the book that I'm currently reading for this video. On Sundays, She Picked Flowers. I'm not sure why I can never remember the name of the book. Oh my gosh. I'm officially on 10% of the way through chapter 3. I feel like I'm losing my voice. From chapter 1, the writing is just so enthralling, and the family dynamics are so toxic, specifically between Judith and her mother. Right off the bat, where there's so much aggression, rage, sadness, just so much emotion built up in Judith, and there's nothing to do other than let it out, and we see that right off the bat. I honestly thought that Judith was a teenager based off of the synopsis. I am here naive enough to assume that Judith can't stand up for herself because she is afraid of her mother, and she's just a lot younger. I should not have thought that at all. Judith is 40 years old, so she is a full-blown adult, and we're just still seeing Judith feel so demolished. Her just feeling so fed up with her life and her mother. She's spiraling and she's hitting rock bottom. I don't want to spoil this book in case you're going to read it, but there's so much abuse and family dynamics that play into just the beginning of the story. I'm really enjoying the writing style. It's third-person point of view, but I just feel like I am feeling everything that Judith is going through, and it's just so tough. Woof. And those are my updates for you. Guys and gals, my friends, this book is so good. Can you believe that this is a debut author? Maybe you didn't even know that. I am pleasantly surprised, but also was not expecting the story to go how it did. If I had to fit this into a genre, I would say that it is part horror, but not scary, part fantasy, and part romance, all while taking place years after Jim Crow era, but it's still a really difficult time period for Black men and women alike living in this society, especially in the South. Those are the categories that I would put this book into now. But before I read this story, I thought it was going to be really scary, but it's actually not that scary. It's very bloody and gory. Judith ends up running away because of something that happens, which I cannot say, and she starts a new life far, far away, deep in the woods, and she ends up living in this haunted house, and that's where the ghouls and ghosts come into play. What's so interesting about this haunted house is that this house feels the way Judith feels. This house is talking to her in ways that Judith cannot explain to other people. This house is haunted. Judith just goes through her life, and as we're reading the story, you can just see her slowly unraveling and be able to live authentically and not be constrained by her mother. And there's just this blossoming woman that you start to get to know. And it's absolutely beautiful, especially when you know about her upbringing and how she has been treated most of her life. There's a lot of gore, and it's very descriptive in terms of violence and blood, so take that as you will. And romance. There's this romance that blossoms between Judith and a woman who shows up at her doorstep. And I wasn't sure at first how this connection and this character was going to add to the story, but it turns out to be a quite horrific romantic story in that. And I am pleasantly surprised by that. I would not have expected it. It's more so reminding me of What Hunger by Catherine Dang, Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, any story that has to do with female rage and cannibalism. This author does such a wonderful job at describing exactly how Judith is feeling, and it truly just makes me want Judith to win at life. I want her to win at anything and everything that she does, and I want her to get whatever she wants in life. A line that I highlighted that perfectly describes the story is, "What an exquisite emotion, rage." And this is a story of Judith feeling rage and knowing how to process through it and get herself on the other side of rage. At one point in the story, Judith breaks down and she's sobbing. Oh, how long it'd been since she'd cried. She'd been fixing her face so long, she forgot what it was like, the relief of a dam breaking. How sweet it was to weep with abandon, to cry for her bruises, for being too old and too young, for being black and big-boned, for being strange and unlovely, for not belonging anywhere or to anybody. My heart hurts for Judith. This entire story, it's kind of like a coming of age story for an adult finding herself again. And I don't think I've read a story quite like that. And I kind of like it more than a coming of age story. I feel like reading from an adult's point of view and knowing that one can be okay in the end, there's something so special about that. Judith was 41 when she left her mother's house, hunched and humbled. She didn't think it was possible for her to be in this world, to be at peace, to be alone, to exist for no other purpose than existing itself. In sunlight and solitude, she bloomed. I am at a part of the story where I am noticing some similarities between Judith and her mother's relationship, and now Judith and the love interest that we end up meeting. And I'm nervous to see where the story is going to go. I don't know how the story is going to end. There's a little bit of action in it. It's all over the place, but it's written in such a cohesive way that I never would have expected it to be. I am loving it so far. Potential 5 stars, depending on how the story is going to end. I feel like it can be a hit or miss when it comes to reading an advanced copy of a book that hasn't been released yet. And I'm so glad that I took a gamble on this book. Who are we kidding though? Saga Press is probably one of my favorite publishers. I am a part of their influencer program, and I can trust them with all of the best book recs, and they are publishing this book. So makes sense. I can't wait to finish this book. I am itching to find out how Judith's story is going to end. I'm also terrified. Ignore that I look like this. I'm wearing a sweatshirt that says where I work, and I don't want to take it off because I'm cold. But now I realize that you could probably just Google me and figure out where I work. But it's okay. It doesn't need to be on a video recorded and saved forever for YouTube. So I'm just comfy and cozy. I did finish on Sundays She Picked Flowers, and holy cow, 5 stars. I recommend that you read this book. It comes out end of January. It's so devastatingly beautiful, but also heartbreaking, but also romantic in a sense. I just can't explain it without spoiling anything. And this is a book that you just need to read. I think this is probably one of the most unique horror stories that I've read. I'm just still thinking about the ending, and I'm still thinking about Jude and just how full circle her story came to be. This book is so short, it's so fast paced, and actually I saw that the author published the very first chapter on the web already. I believe it's on Medium. If I can find it, I will link it down below. So if you want to read the first chapter, go for it. I think even just from the first chapter, I knew that the story had potential. I'm just blown away by Yah Yah's writing, and I still cannot believe this is a debut novel. Ultimately, this is a story about generational trauma. There are a few chapters about Judith's mother's sisters, so Judith's aunts, 2 of them, and we get to read from their perspective and just how they're mourning the loss of their sister, and also thinking back to their childhood and how violent their childhood was as well. And so you can see the trickling down effect and how and why maybe Judith was just so constantly abused by her mother. And I'm not saying that that's okay by any means at all. Abuse, whether it's physical, mental, and emotional, assault, not okay. But you can just get a better understanding of Judith's mother's thought process, I guess, and how she felt. There's a lot of pieces that end up clicking by the last third of the book. There are 4 parts in this book. The first part is us learning about Judith setting the stage and figuring out why she decides to run away. Part 2 is, I would say it's a lot milder. It's where Judith gets a chance to live her life. She is 40 plus years old at this point. She's living in this haunted house in the woods. Nobody comes to her. She doesn't have any friends, but she has nature. She has herself, and she's at peace with being able to live with no restraints. And this is also the part where she meets this woman who's also the love interest. Part 3 is, again, awful, traumatizing, just as bad as part 1. And then part 4, there's this solace that we feel. We're at ease. There's some peace to how the story ends. Very much a roller coaster ride. I feel like I have gone through so many emotions in just such a short amount of time. I don't know how Yah Yah did it though, because she wove in these magnificent, extreme emotions into all of our characters that Jude interacts with, and it guides the story so naturally. Also, the romantic relationship between Judith and the love interest, the woman that she meets in the woods, is so clever and also very dynamic. And you can see the give and take that Judith finally deserves and the respect that she finally deserves as well, up until a point, and things start happening and your mind is blown, and that's all I am going to say, because you gotta read this book. I already know so many people who I would recommend this book to, and it's for anyone who likes big, dynamic, character-driven stories, but also this is a story that has a steady plot, because I wanted to know Judith's story. I wanted to know what ends up happening to her. This is a story about a woman who's been wronged her entire life, and she decides that it's time to stand up for herself, or she's gonna die. This is a story about a woman who for 40 plus years didn't think that she had the guts to choose how her life ends, choose how she wants to live her life. And it's also a story about love, both sisterly but also romantically. And there's a lot of other events that happen in between. So you must read it. This is a story that reminds us that life is beautiful and there are these precious moments, but also life is shit ass scary. Wow, what a beautiful book. And I'm so glad that I'm ending 2025 with such an emotional and raw and unique story. You should read it. Please read it when it comes out. I also think you can request to read it on NetGalley, so go do that, and let's talk about it after. Where there's darkness, there's also light, and Judith ended up finding both. It's time to end this video here. I will see you in another video next week. I'm so excited for this next video and the book that I'm gonna read. I'm having fun with reading vlogs again. This is fun. This is really fun. I hope you have a great day. I will see you next week. Bye.